federal judge is rejecting the U.S. Justice Department's bid to unseal grand jury materials in the Ghislaine Maxwell case. Let's go to CNN's crime and justice correspondent, Caitlin Polantz. Caitlin, what is the judge saying?
Well, Wolf, the judge is outright rejecting the Justice Department's bid for transparency around the grand jury transcripts that were behind the indictment of Ghislaine Maxwell in 2021. The judge says that the Justice Department's arguments, they just do not fly. The Justice Department wanted to say there was special circumstances here of public interest to want these transcripts to come out. And the judge over and over again, this is Paul Engelmeyer in the Southern District of New York Federal Court, he says that just is not the case. It's not a special circumstance because there's not enough in these grand jury transcripts that would be new to bring to the public anything of substance. Some of the choice words from the judge: the grand jury materials would not reveal new information of any consequence. And this is a judge that has reviewed under seal a lot of these records from the grand jury deciding this situation. Also, the judge is saying in a binder that the Justice Department turned over of things that might not be public, it's only scattered words, clauses, occasional sentences. He says that there would be next to nothing new. There's no there. He also swipes at the Justice Department's reasoning here, this argument that there should be public transparency around these grand jury records, and that's a reason for their for them to be released, to wipe away the confidentiality that is so sacrosanct around grand jury records. And Wolf, the judge says that there could be a perception that this entire attempt by the Justice Department to unseal these records was aimed not at transparency, but at diversion. He says it's disingenuous and there's been a misleading public characterization of what is in these records. He also looks at victims who were writing to the court asking for transparency and says they have been misled too. They are a reason why there should be transparency, but there just wouldn't be anything if these grand jury transcripts were released. Back to you.
All right, Caitlin Polantz reporting. Thank you very, very much, Pamela.
All right, I also want to bring back CNN senior legal analyst Elie Honig. All right, so Elie, you're very busy today, obviously, on a lot of fronts. Let's talk about this issue. It goes without saying, this is significant. What is your reaction to the judge's rejection here?
Well, Pam, it's not a surprise. So first of all, there are 3 different motions that DOJ has made to 3 different judges to unseal various portions of the Epstein prosecutions and the Ghislaine Maxwell prosecution. Now 2 of the 3 judges have rejected DOJ's motion. The Florida judge rejected the motion relating to the original Epstein prosecution, and now one of the New York judges has rejected DOJ's motion to unseal grand jury records on the Ghislaine Maxwell case. And the reason for that, first of all, grand jury testimony is ordinarily secret. There's a specific federal rule that says you can only unseal grand jury testimony in specific narrow circumstances. And both judges who have ruled so far found none of those circumstances apply here. Usually that applies where some other prosecutor or some other defendant needs the materials. Now, in the case that just came down, DOJ argued, yes, but there's special circumstances. The public has a need for transparency. And as Caitlin just laid out, this judge starkly rejects that. This judge says there's really very little of substance that's new or informative in the grand jury records. Essentially, all of the relevant information is in the indictments themselves. And it's not surprising, Pam, by the way, because the way federal prosecutors usually indict cases is you just put an FBI agent in the grand jury. We know that's what was done here. The FBI agent gives a broad overview of the case that basically tracks the indictment, and then you have your indictment. And so it seems that's exactly what happened here. And the judge therefore says there's no real need for transparency. This wouldn't add anything. Therefore, the motion's rejected.
Let me just follow up very quickly, Elie, because, the administration could argue, well, look, we're trying to release all this information, but the judge is blocking. But to be clear, this is a small part of the information the administration has in its possession, right?
Very important point, Pam. Yes, the grand jury testimony we're talking about is a sliver of a fraction of the entire file. We know that it's only testimony from 2 law enforcement agents. All the rest of the files, Pam, all the non-grand jury material, the vast majority of the case itself, that's all within DOJ's control. They have to, of course, redact and protect people's identities, but they could put that out today if they wanted to.
All right, Elie Honig, thanks so much.
New this morning, J.D. Vance, in a new interview, is pushing back against the criticism coming at the Trump administration for how they have handled or fumbled the Epstein saga. The vice president now trying to shift the narrative and blame Democrats.
I laugh at the Democrats who are now all of a sudden so interested in the Epstein files. For 4 years, Joe Biden and the Democrats did absolutely nothing about this story.
And there are new numbers this morning showing something of a shift in how Americans are feeling about this. Harry Anton, here to help. What are you seeing in these numbers?
Yeah, I would say that this is, from at least a political point of view, quickly turning into a dud of a story. What am I talking about here?
Which is wild.
Which is wild.
This has been for 3 weeks.
Exactly. Now. Take a look here. Google searches for Epstein down 89% versus just 3 weeks ago. Falling through the floor. It is no longer the top term searched alongside Donald Trump's name. That's been trading off between tariffs and Vladimir Putin, with obviously the meeting coming up later this week. But at this particular point, the American people's interest in this story, it's quickly becoming something of a nothing burger.
So out of sight, out of mind, maybe, is applying here a little bit. But has it impacted, have you seen numbers that have impacted Trump's popularity, favorability, anything?
No, not really. I mean, take a look here. Let's take a look at the overall numbers. Trump's approval rating in July of 2025, it was 45%. It's still well within that margin of error here at 44%. And you compare that to where he was in his first term at this point, he was at 37%. So he's 7 points higher, very much in a different political universe now, significantly higher in terms of his overall approval rating than he was at this point in his first term. And more than that, among Republicans, his approval rating is near a record high, hovering right at about that 90% mark. So no, he hasn't lost any of that base. And when it comes to that center of the electorate, he's basically holding on there. And his overall approval rating, 44%, is pretty gosh darn good for him, considering where he was at this point in term number one.
What do you think is behind it? Why there hasn't been more movement?
Yeah, why hasn't there been more movement? I think this is pretty simple. Take a look here. Nation's top issue is the Epstein case. This is the number of respondents. This isn't the percentage of respondents. This is the number of respondents. In our last CNN poll, look at this. 0 respondents said that the Epstein case was the top issue. How about among independents? 0 independents said that. And among Republicans, and therefore overall, just a single one. So yes, there used to be a lot of interest in this story, but the bottom line is that even amongst those who had high interest in this story, it wasn't something that they thought was all that important. And as I said at the beginning, the interest in this story has fallen off the table.
Which also, when you look at this and you compare it to just the attention that Capitol Hill was giving it, Donald Trump supporters were giving it, congressional committees were giving it, it is incongruous.
I would just say this. Donald Trump has some of the best political instincts of any politician I've seen. And on this particular issue, you see it full well and clear, because he has been saying, you know what, this is not an issue. And it turns out that a lot of the American public actually seem to agree with him.
If you dream it, it will become.
Ghislaine Maxwell, of course, she was supposed to be deposed before the committee. That got postponed as the Supreme Court is reviewing her appeal. She's now in a low security facility. Is there any way to force the White House to release audio of the conversation she had with the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche?
Yeah, we've certainly asked. We've certainly also requested that she come before a committee. We also requested that the victims have the chance to tell their stories as well. So we asked that they be able to come testify, because Ghislaine Maxwell is a liar, right? And right now, Trump and this administration has a pardon hanging over her to be able to incentivize her to basically protect the president and his involvement in the Epstein saga. And so we'd like some answers, and we'd like some truthful answers as well, which is why we're trying to get the voices of the victims also heard.
I want to play for you something that Vice President J.D. Vance was saying, essentially that, look, Democrats could have done more on this issue when they had the power. Why didn't they? I mean, obviously, this Epstein thing has gone back all the way to like 2006 under multiple administrations. So here's what J.D. Vance had to say, the Vice President.
I laugh at the Democrats who are now all of a sudden so interested in the Epstein files. For 4 years, Joe Biden and the Democrats did absolutely nothing about this story. We know that Jeffrey Epstein had a lot of connections with left-wing politicians and left-wing billionaires, and now President Trump has demanded full transparency from this, and yet somehow the Democrats are attacking him and not the Biden administration, which did nothing for 4 years.
The president campaigned on this repeatedly last year. In fact, his FBI director and deputy FBI director, when they were going around campaigning for the president, this is all they talked about, pretty much. And so then he gets elected, and then he realizes that he's in the files, and now the files can't be released, right? The information can't be released. And so this is just another example of a broken promise that this president has made to the American people. Joe Biden isn't in the Epstein files. Joe Biden wasn't hiding anything, right? In the end, it's Trump who has the files, supposedly. He said that it's on the FBI director's desk and won't release them. So this is a broken campaign promise. That's why it's different.